Welcome to Harmonium LA, the podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Heedy Gandolfi, emotional wellness expert, founder of Harmonium LA and published author. The world needs healing now more than ever. My goal is to bring you inspiring conversations, tips, and techniques that will help you build a sustainable healing toolkit. The Harmonium LA podcast is the only resource you will need to slow down, stop searching, and start healing. Welcome back to the show, another episode of Stop Searching and Start Healing. So today's guest is really such a beautiful soul. She has an incredible presence about her, and just the work that she is doing in the world with her healing practice is really quite groundbreaking, actually, and a really interesting take on combining neuroscience, psychology with shamanic healing practices. So it's really interesting. It's going to be a really fabulous conversation. I know that you're going to be able to take away some really useful tips and pointers from today's show. So let me give you a bit of a background before we bring in our guest. Mèv Bertrand is the founder of Spirit Heartlight and the creator of Soul Coaching for Mental Wellness, a groundbreaking approach to mental health that combines modern shamanic healing, psychology, and neuroscience. She has seen firsthand the profound transformative impact of accessing different realms of consciousness to shift our inner reality, as well as the powerful effect on the outer reality we experience and create as a result. Trained as a shamanic healer with a previous background and career in psychology and neuroscience, she pioneers mentorship programs with a resolute focus on grounding the work done at a spiritual level in this reality, integrating it within the brain and the psyche. One of her favorite mottos is "Let's get real." Connecting to our higher consciousness and to the world of spirits allows to gain incredible wisdom and perspective. And yet we have a responsibility to fully embrace our human reality, as by bypassing this experience makes a nonsense of the collective and personal purpose of incarnation. So without any further ado, join me in welcoming Mèv to the show. Mèv, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm absolutely thrilled that you are here with us on the show.
God, it's my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me. Very excited.
And you're joining us all the way from Montreal this morning, today.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's not too bad here. It's kind of sunny. It's springtime. So yeah, Canadian spring.
Spring. Can't beat it. How magical. And you spend time as well between London, right? You still spend a lot of time between London as well. So
well, obviously a little bit less now.
Exactly.
Since we're not so able to travel. But yeah, that's my second home. Yeah.
Beautiful. So just so people know, just a bit of a background, we're both in a mastermind group together, and that's how we initially met. And for a couple of reasons we connected. Number one, because, well, obviously there's the connection with the UK, but also because of the work that we are doing. So, you are versed so much in, mental health and mental well-being, and you've now managed to complement that very much with this beautiful spiritual practice, which we'll get into a little bit more. But, with the similar kind of work that I'm in with Harmonium, it's very much blending science and spirituality together to create this really powerful technique to use for healing at a really deep root level. And so, we had a lot of things in common. And then when we connected, we started chatting, it just was so, relevant to me, and just so, just so aware to me that the work you are doing is so necessary in the world right now. So thank you for coming and sharing all of your wisdom and all of your knowledge with the audience today.
Well, my absolute pleasure. And I would say likewise in terms of your work. So there we go.
Beautiful. So let's just get to know you. Let's hear a bit about your story and how you got into doing what you're doing, because it is so unique and is so fascinating. But let's hear your kind of journey into what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll try and sum it up because it's about 20 years of my life. So I studied psychology at university, and then through all sorts of, how life takes you, I ended up working in a neuroscience consultancy. And so these were two of my main backgrounds. In the consultancy, I was actually diving in. A lot of my work was to do with the neuroscience of storytelling and how stories impact the parts of the brain that are responsible for behavior change. And so, it's a very interesting topic, because it completely relates to psychology in terms of the stories we tell ourselves, but also in terms of I guess, shamanism or spiritual practices, because we are the blueprint of the universe we create through our stories. And so the stories we tell ourselves are, what creates our inner reality. And from our inner reality, we build the world that we're in. So I was not into any sort of spiritual stuff when I was doing neuroscience research. But for 15 years of my life, I was struggling with chronic depression. And as I would say, I was an overachiever with depression. So it didn't look like I had depression. It didn't look like I had any kind of mental health issues. It probably looked like I was crushing it in many aspects of my life and career, but it wasn't really the case. And so I've done traditional therapy, and looked, and then certain life events happened that made it worse, and etc. But eventually, I found spiritual practices, which at the beginning and still now, the first spiritual practice I encountered was Buddhism. And so I became a Buddhist and really discovered a life philosophy that it's like this understanding of life put finally words onto what I always kind of felt inside of me was, the way life or the universe actually works. And so in terms of really connecting to something that's really transcendent, really finding a mission that's greater than yourself, really taking full responsibility for your inner transformation and all of that stuff. Fast forward a few years, and I had a very good friend of mine who was into shamanic practices, which I thought were very weird at the time. And but after hearing some of his experiences, which are just extraordinary, I started looking into it. And then I found another world, another universe of incredible wisdom and practices to help. For me, it wasn't at that stage not just about healing, but also about discovering different aspects of my being, and learning about different ways of engaging in the world, really, as a human. And eventually, I came to this crossroad in my life where I decided that I wanted to do something for people who had experienced the same kind of were experiencing the same kind of stuff that I was experiencing, which is, the profound mental pain without any kind of solution. And so I've eventually created this approach that I now practice and teach, which is soul coaching for mental wellness, which combines everything that I've studied, accumulated, practiced, and worked on throughout the years. So in psychology and neuroscience, in spiritual and shamanic practices, into kind of a really holistic approach to mental health and mental wellness. And so this is really, I guess, bringing out all the tools that I've used for myself and finding how they can help others, really. So this is it.
I love that. And it's fascinating to me because you were in that world of psychology and neuroscience, and yet you were still struggling to such an immense degree yourself with depression. And so, like you say, it just doesn't seem to marry up. How could that possibly be? But then, until you go much deeper, and I think that's the thing, you can look at taking all the scientific evidence and everything else, but you really do need to have that aspect of spirituality. You really do need that backbone of connection to source and spirit to really go deep, to uncover what it is. I mean, you still sometimes never find out what exactly it is, but you really do need, and I think that's the way that healing is moving so much more nowadays, right? This new paradigm in healing, people realize that just that old way with just the science on its own and the medicine is necessary and needed, but it doesn't always solve the problem deeply at root level.
No, it doesn't. And then you've just said that word, right? It's the root cause, because I think that there's a lot of techniques and practices from more traditional ways of understanding mental well-being and health in general, but let's remain into the world of mental well-being, that are helpful sometimes in terms of crisis or to move forward, but it doesn't necessarily address the root cause. And certainly in my experience, obviously in my life, but also with my clients, is that even if some of the root causes can be addressed, and I believe that they can through psychology and neuroscience and the physiology of how we feel mentally and emotionally,
Yeah.
there is a part of us that exists outside, within, or, encompassing those two other things. And that's the part that also needs to be looked at, investigated, honored,
Yeah.
for us to actually heal.
Mm.
And so that's for sure, that was my case. That was the missing link, missing part, that as much as I had a whole degree, I could diagnose myself and I could do all
Yeah.
sorts of things to figure out what was wrong and how I could get better. But there was something that I couldn't figure out
Yeah.
without that
Missing
aspect.
piece of the puzzle. And I think, like you said, you sum it up, because you get to that place where nothing else is working and yet you're still not where you want to be. And so you have to start looking at these much more alternative, and like you say, sometimes woo-woo kind of out there, weird and wonderful techniques that people are very judgmental about, and very quick to criticize and judge, and how could that possibly work? But I mean, I think you went into the jungle and you studied all these shamanic practices and you did all the things that you needed to do to really immerse yourself in that, to embrace and really understand how that could help, so that you could then put that into your practice and start helping and working with your clients on that same level.
Absolutely. And it's funny because, of course, some of my friends are within, the world of spirituality, but a lot of my friends aren't. And so to come across people that are like, okay, you're being very weird right now. But so that's one thing, but actually, and actually now I say it, I realize that this has really prompted me to investigate what I was experiencing and how, in terms of myself, but also in terms of my clients, what it was that we were doing, why it was working, or how it was working. Because I think doubt and, investigating is a very, very healthy part of having a spiritual practice. Because otherwise it becomes blind faith, and it becomes bypass, and it becomes all these things that I guess the people that are against those practices are very skeptical, point out that you're just there kind of going, this is going to be magical, and closing your eyes. But if your mind, to a degree, I wouldn't say critical, if you exert your own judgment, if you remain grounded in your investigation of what's going on, then you can really uncover I would say the truth, or a truth, or more truth, than if you just go blindly into it because it's attractive, or if you dismiss it. And so now that I've done that kind of investigation, I realize there are parallels. There are things that converge, right? So, which is, well, frankly, reassuring. It's reassuring when we find that there are concepts and practices and things that are very spiritual, very woo-woo, that have some sort of correlation with what's going on in the brain and what's going on in the psyche. Yeah. And then I realized, that's not even new. Like so people have started understanding this, a little while ago.
Yeah, people are becoming, more open to listening and to investigating. I think, like you say, being curious and knowing that, they can't continue on this path that they've been on, because yes, there's a science and there's a technique and there's a method to it, but it's ultimately not really getting to the crux of the problem. And so people are becoming more curious. But I think, like you say, if they're doing it because it's the trend or because everybody else is doing it, then that's possibly not the right entry point in. I think you have to be at that point, because I know exactly it's the same with me. And when we talk about harmonium, it's the very same kind of understanding of what you're saying. It's that you have to be ready for it, because it's that mindset, knowing that you have to commit to it, make those changes, and look at taking it holistically, like you said, and looking at the body as a whole. So it's not just mind, it's emotions, it's spirit, it's all of those different elements that you have to have in order to complete that circle and to get that missing link into it.
Completely, I think. And it's, I think now that we are getting, we're not the only ones investigating that, then it's great, because there becomes, there are now neuroscientists that completely believe in practices to access altered states of consciousness. When I say that, I don't actually necessarily mean, plant medicine. I mean breath work. I mean, what is it that we do as human beings to tap into these different parts of ourselves that are able to observe a bit more, rewire our own little patterns and all of that stuff. So, this is really fundamentally spiritual, but now science is catching up with that and going, that is true. It actually is working.
Absolutely. And remembering that we do have everything we need inside of us. It's all there in us. It's free, it's accessible, but it's just having the awareness and the tools to be able to access it in the right capacity so that it can help us to move forward, depending on where we are with our journey, right? So, I mean, let's just talk about mental wellness for a minute, because, I mean, looking at what's happened globally over the last 12, 13 months, it's been so challenging and taxing. There's been such an increase in mental health issues and problems. I mean, how are you seeing that? Let's just talk to that.
It's interesting. Do you know when people said that COVID is basically the thing that has just magnified the issues that were already there in the first place? If you have a problem in your relationship, then COVID happens, and that brings the problem times 10 to the surface. Job, whatever, what was working. And it's just the same. It's just the same. I feel like there is, the people we're coming to a point where people need to really address their mental well-being and the different dimensions of themselves. That was already a need, but then it became really magnified because we didn't have any outlets to make us forget that we needed to do that.
Right.
And so that's what I see. And there's this famous prophecy by, I might digress a little bit, but by Jean, and it says that just right now what's happening, that 1/3 of the people will go mad, 1/3 will die, and 1/3 will awaken. And I think there is something in there in the sense that it challenges everything that we believed in, and you either lose it completely because you don't have any points of reference to attach yourself to anymore, or it is very tragic, but the rates of suicide have gone up, and so you take the exit way because you can't cope with life as it is now, or something within you kicks in, hopefully, or you get some help, and then the shift happens where you awaken. It sounds grand, but the point is you awaken to the possibilities that you have within yourself. And that is a true, I think, awakening, hopefully, for people. And so I feel like this is what's going on, and what we need to do, you, me, and the other practitioners, is exactly what you're doing, putting the knowledge out there so that the people don't go mad or don't go to the extreme of taking the exit door because they don't know what life is anymore. And they go, wait, there is a third option, and there's lots of help around, and I can find what works for me. Because I think in that there's also, you look at things and maybe they don't fit and maybe you don't believe in it, but with just a bit of hope and a bit of knowing that there are different avenues that work for different people, then at least people can think before the exit or the going mad bit, maybe I'll look a bit further. Maybe I'll try something, see if that works for me.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. I had a guest on the show a few weeks ago, Rob Mack, and he's this fabulous guy, and he talks about that he was at one point really, really suicidal in his life, and he got to the point where he actually had a knife and he was contemplating. He was moments away, and something inside him said, hold on a minute, just stop for a second, just think about this and just research, just go. And he said in that moment he stopped and he went off and got onto Google and did some research, and what can I do to change this? There has to be something I can do, and actually starting to ask for help, to look outside of where he was, and to just try and see that there had to be a different way. And I think that's the key right there. It's not knowing where to start a lot of the time, isn't it? And so I think that's the whole reason for bringing this show to life, is like, let's bring as many techniques and tips and modalities and experts and humans together that can offer some, because what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another, and everybody's at different stages of their journey and their healing. And so they will need different elements along the way that will resonate more at one point than another.
100%. And what you said just made me think of something, and I forgot it, but hang on. It was, the moment where you go to one really, really to one extreme, which I have done as well.
Yeah.
And I've
Yeah.
experienced this exact same shift, and it's really interesting. It is like some part of you goes, wait a second.
Yeah.
And from that, things change.
Yeah.
And what I think is so important is to put the message out there, not just that there is help, but also almost to normalize. I wouldn't say, normalize suicidal thinking, but to normalize negative emotion or mental pain.
Yes.
Because what I really believe is that we have to start being a lot more compassionate towards yourself, but seeing mental pain as just a signal. It is the same kind of signal as your, when I say appendicitis, is that even how you say that in English?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And do you know what I mean? Like it's, or it is, pain is a signal. And so but because we don't understand emotional pain the same way, we draw conclusions that are so extreme, and then that push people to all sorts of things, and that prevent them from trying to look for solutions. If you had a tummy ache, you'd be like, I have a tummy ache. Tummy ache, it's lasted for 5 days. I'm not eating something right. I'm going to talk to a nutritionist. I'm going to go to the doctor. Okay, the doctor can't do anything. Fine, let's try an alternative medicine. You wouldn't just be like, I'm meant to have a tummy ache for the rest of my life. This is how I was born, and therefore I'm going to be miserable for, whatever, all everything that we get caught up into thinking and projecting when we are feeling emotional pain. And I think that's part of my big message for sure, is to go, this is not as big a deal as you feel it is. It is a signal. It is a signal. And if you find what it's trying to tell you, you'll be fine.
Well, that's it. But there's so much stigma around it. Obviously, a lot less now than there used to be. But it's like, oh no, you don't want to talk about mental health because it means there's something wrong with you. Well, of course there's something wrong with you, but it's like you say, it's the message that your body is sending you, which is, I need some help here. Like, you have to stop. You have to listen to me, because I'm trying to tell you there's something much deeper on an emotional level going on, and I need help.
On an emotional level, or on a spiritual level, or frankly also on a physical level. Because that's the other thing, right? The way we feel is impacted by hormones, by chemicals that flow in our bodies, and all of that stuff. So it's a holistic investigation, as we've said, but one that would be done with more curiosity, with less shame, and with a lot more hope, if we treated it as a signal instead of some doomed illness or something terribly wrong, which we, before it was just something that people didn't talk about, and now we talk about it like it's, a massive issue, which it is. But again, if we stopped thinking that for a second, then it wouldn't be such a big issue. We'd just find, we'd find the help, we'd investigate, and we'd grow as well, more seamlessly, less painfully.
And I guess the worrying thing as well is that the age at which people are suffering so much more from mental health seems to be getting younger and younger and younger. I mean, what would you say to that? What do you think the reasons are behind that?
I mean, for sure. Okay. Well, definitely since last year, it's been extremely dramatic. I get so many people that come to me, and it's kind of like they come with a combo of like, this is me and my daughter, like, we need help. And I think that, obviously what's happened in the last year, I think the reason why it's affecting everybody, why it might be worse for young people, is because, frankly, actually it's the same reason. So the reason why things are worse for young people is because this is where you are growing the most. So, right, in terms of who you are, your identity, what you perceive life to be. So all of those challenges, they're magnified, they're huge. This is the first time you're encountering all of those challenges when you are, a teenager or something like that. It's, let's say, from 15 to 25 or whatever. So the challenges are huge. And these are the I guess the almost also the spiritual challenges, because that we don't name that way, but that fundamentally, it begs the question, who do you want to be? How do you want to live life? What life what is life for you? Like big questions. That translates into who you're going to hang out with and all of these practical things that teenagers deal with. But fundamentally, these are the big questions. So big challenges. And also, let's say biological. Well, okay. And then the second thing is, so psychologically, the way the brain develops, it's not actually fully developed till 18 for women and 21 for men. So actually, there are some functions in your brain that aren't fully there to help you. One of them is the ability to have full perspective on a situation, to understand that it can end. And so this is why teenagers are like, this is never going to end or whatever, obviously, because of lots of other reasons. But one of them is actually a physiological brain reason, that it's not, the brain isn't actually performing that function as well as in adults. So first of all, big challenges. Second of all, brain not necessarily being optimal in terms of understanding these challenges can end and can be solved. And then the third thing is, and again, a physiological thing, is the levels of new hormones that the body and the brain needs to adjust to, which again, if we understood this better, we might be able to look at what's going on within us as just like, whoopsie, I've had too much chocolate, the same thing as we would understand if we eat something that, and there's just too much, and then you're going to have a bit of a tummy ache or whatever. Like, okay, at the moment, there's just a little bit of a hormonal imbalance and adjustment that's going on within me. And that makes me feel like this, like this, like this, but it's not me. It's just a feeling that's caused by something.
And then couple that with the fact that they've had to stay home and isolated from their friends and society and doing the normal things that teenagers would do to explore and to grow and expand.
So that's why.
And it's true, like you say, I mean, a lot of the clients that I'm seeing in my practice, especially the last few months, have been parents and teenagers. And a lot of the teenagers that are coming, the doctors have put them on the antidepressants and the medication. And that's been the quick fix to try and help them through this. And, even my own doctor said to me, she said, I'm just shocked and horrified at the number of people that are coming through and are specifically asking for medication because they're just not able to cope.
Yeah, no, it's happened as well to friends of mine, who have teenage children, and they're like, they see the doctor, and the level of prescription medicine that they are kind of giving out is just crazy.
So there is a better way, and so really, it's highlighting, to know that it's okay to talk about it, to ask for help, and to know that it's okay to not be okay, and just to raise that awareness within, especially within the younger community. And for parents to acknowledge that as well when they're, because I think a lot of the time as well, probably, as a mum of teens myself, I should imagine that from a teenage standpoint, they don't want to come to you as a parent and say, listen, I'm really struggling. I don't feel okay. I need help. They're just going to become even more insular and inward and just end up struggling to even lower depths. So just knowing, and as parents and as older, more knowledgeable, just to being able to talk to our kids about it and saying it's okay. But from a perspective of how you are now working, I mean, what are you seeing, and how would you, talk about the work that you are doing with your clients and how that's slightly different using this really deep spiritual aspect to it as well?
So in terms of what I do in practice with my clients, I'm just going to go back to what you said. I think you're 100% right that it is by being open to talk about it. It is the first thing. Well, actually, and that links to my work, because one of the things that I kind of bang on about when I work one-to-one with clients is to really open up to what they're feeling as a signal, as something that is actually part of their healing process. Same with inflammation. I always make comparison with the body because I think it's just so much easier to understand tangibly. If you sprain your ankle, it's gonna hurt. It's not going to hurt because your ankle is doomed. It's going to hurt because you sprained it. And you need to do specific things to let it heal. And actually, the hurt part of it is inflammation. It is actually the natural healing response of the body. It's not even like, oh, that's the problem. It's like, this is the healing response. This is what your body needs to move through to heal. And so so one thing is really changing perspective about these things. And then in terms of practices, it is try to put this in a tangible way, but so I would have somebody come in, or not come in, because now it's distant healing.
Yeah.
And usually they would lay on, I like the floor. I think it's connecting to the earth, and that's very handy. And they would typically not do a huge amount. They would close their eyes and they would receive, the healing. Now, there's been, we were talking about that, we've been now taught to kind of access somebody's energy through, in a much more distant way now. But I think it was, it was being done before, a long time, as in not just before the pandemic, but, shamanic cultures have done these kinds of projections of their energy for a very long time. But now, since the pandemic, we've just developed that, even us, kind of the modern versions of
modern mystic.
And we've had to. So there is a technique that I do to access that, basically. But what I would typically do is I would play a specific type of sounds, which is a shamanic drumming sounds, which not everybody needs them. I find them extremely helpful for me to get into different sort of, I would say, states of consciousness to access their energy. And it's been proven to be extremely beneficial for the brain. A colleague of mine does drumming in hospitals just for normal patients, because those particular vibrations create theta waves in the brain, which are very, very relaxing. And so in terms of what you experience as a client, it's quite relaxing. In terms of what I do, then I go into those spirit worlds, which the way I describe it, somebody who's never done something like this, it's something like a mental map, and it's specific directions. Obviously, they've been, transmitted from mouth to mouth, through years and years of teaching. And they've been proven to work among all, shamanic cultures. And so this is a state where you get I get into a state of akin to, I would say, deep meditation, and in which I'm aware enough to follow specific instructions or specific steps, steps in my consciousness to access a particular world, right? So it's just like following a mental map to go somewhere. And these places, in a nutshell, let's say, there's a place called the lower world and a place called the upper world. And you get there by going down or up, as it sounds roughly. Most of the work that I do in, let's say, the lower world, again, is a state of consciousness to access things at an energy level, spiritual level in my clients, have to do with healing. So it also mental healing. But you would get things like, I guess a lot of people have heard about power animals or spirit animals, which are not actual animals, but they are energies. They are kind of inner force that might help a client, or that want to come and help a client for a particular thing. Again, I don't do physical healing, so it would be, emotional healing, but it would be, I'm trying to think on the spot of a particular force. Okay, well, that's just very broad, but it could be something to do with courage, or the courage to speak, your own truth, or something like that would be obviously represented through an animal, which again is not an actual animal, but it's a particular force and particular piece of information, which is also very helpful, because it says to me, what it's there for, and also what to do when we are back in our three-dimensional sort of reality to maintain it. Because all of this incredible work can be done at a spiritual level, and when we're not in our kind of ordinary state of consciousness. But what we found, actually, and that's not just me, that's people who have worked in hospitals with patients that were mentally ill, is that it's important to integrate that work in our ordinary state of consciousness, so that it really is maintained. And so I will gather some information on how to do that. And it doesn't have to be extravagant things, but it might mean, for example, that's a very easy one, it might mean to put into practice certain things to express that energy. So let's say I would think about my example I've just mentioned, which is something that you need to have, or you were missing the courage to speak your own truth, for example. Now it's being brought back to you, but you need to honor that by taking small steps to do it. And, XYZ situation, for example. And obviously we continue the work. It does not just a one-off. This is a, proper work, and it's integrating through weeks to help the person heal, different aspects of themselves or their psyche or spiritual force field and all of that.
It's beautiful, and there's so many similarities with the work I do, but also very different. And I think it's almost like you're the vehicle, the vessel between the two worlds almost. And so it's almost like when people come to you, it's like they're in the basement, right? They're really in the lowest depths of the depths. And it's like the work that you do and tuning in with their spirit and their soul, and you can then elevate them up to the penthouse. That's the goal at the end of the day, is they come to you in the basement and working with you and progressing through all those different levels of emotions and fears and mental blocks and traumas, allow them to elevate gradually up through the different layers and get to the penthouse. But it isn't without, there's no fast elevator when you're dealing with your emotions. And on that level, you have to take the stairs sometimes, and that's slow, and it can be exhausting as well sometimes. But it's almost like, is this where you kind of relate the soul coaching part of it? So you get these messages, you get these kind of feelings and vibrations, and then you're able to coach your clients as a result of what you've kind of tapped into during the sessions.
Yes, that's definitely one part of it. I'm trying to think. When you were talking, I had ideas, and I was like, oh God, I forgot my ideas. Yes, there is that. Oh, I was going to say two things. One thing is that, yes, it is a slow process to properly transform, in the depth of who we are. However, I think sometimes, I know that sometimes a single piece of information will really help somebody make sense of a lot of things about themselves and about how they understand the world. And that can be such a relief that it kind of changes everything in one go. So there's that bit, right? When we get information from, our own transcendent wisdom, or something that is so fundamental to us, and it speaks to us in certain ways, then it can really change. And it doesn't mean that we don't do the work, but it means that we kind of feel there's some form of grounding that we can hold on to, that makes so much sense to us that we can, keep going. So that's, the one thing. And the second thing is that I also, the way I do things, so I am a shamanic practitioner and a shamanic healer, but my program is about teaching people how to access their own transcendent wisdom by themselves, so that they don't always have to come back to a healer. They can heal themselves, right?
Because self-healing.
We all have this ability to heal ourselves, to transform, to tap into different aspects of our consciousness in order to really foster that healing. And so that's also what I do. And the other part that I didn't mention when I was describing what I do is that obviously at the beginning, people might just lay down and just relax.
Yeah.
But to be honest, actually, most often than not, they will also experience either, physical sensations, or they'll see certain things in the mind, in the mind's eye or whatever. They will experience some form of information with, through visuals or through feelings, because it's such a powerful tool. And also because our transcendent wisdom is just waiting for us to stop and listen. And it's like, as soon as we do that, which I force them to do when they lay down and they don't do anything, it's like, oh my God, I can get in. And so it does that. And then it's about finding more ways, to tap into it when you need it, to investigate, to ask questions, to get the healing that you need, and all that stuff, which is kind of what I teach as well. So that
so they'll come, and so they'll commit to kind of like a program with you. They'll sign up, and then it's all done over Zoom, and then you have programs that people sign up, and then you just move through, and each is individual and specific to every single client, I'm guessing, right?
Yes. So in terms of, there are fundamental practices, which is the part that is online, because this is something that anyone has to start from. And then there is the individual sessions where we obviously address, first of all, specific things that are happening, mental wellness wise, and also in their lives and all of that stuff. And where we really tailor what we do and the teachings and the practices to somebody, so that they have the more specific set of tools to heal themselves.
Yeah. So, and that's it right there, giving them the tools, because that's, you know, and this is what this show is all about. It's getting the tools and the tips that you need to support you on your own healing journey, so that you have that toolkit to pull from regardless, because it's always going to change. And there are always different things that come in and catch us off guard. And one minute we think we're great, and then the next minute we just hit like a bus and we're back to square one again, it feels. And so to have that toolkit to pull from is essential. So what would you, what tips would you be able to give to the audience that they, you know, that they might be able to pull from, that you would say is a really your kind of go-to if they're really struggling or in a really dark place and really?
Okay, well, the first thing I've said, but it's to really, really trust that if you are feeling mental pain of any kind, what's going on is that your soul is trying to tell you something about yourself. And the only way it's found to talk to you is through pain, in a very similar way that we will not listen to our bodies until it hurts. So
Right.
we're a bit stubborn humans. And so, and to really understand that. And then obviously, I would say, believe that there is help out there. That would be the first thing. Believe that you can get to a place where you feel profoundly, profoundly happy, because that's kind of what we're here for. And believe that, however, you might be in a position where you just need to expand, right? Expand the way you think, or expand the practices to tap within you, or expand, you know, habits. There's just an expansion, and that stretching sometimes might feel painful, but it's really just for you to grow. And that would be, it's fundamentals, but it is ultimately about about perception of what's really going on, and trust in what's really going on as well, which allows you to then go on, because all of, as you said, like, well, thanks to your good work, actually, now all of the tools are going to be out there now. Hopefully, you know, that people will then have what it takes to go and look for the tools, because ultimately after that, it's just a tool. And actually, I will say that and think we make it, I think we've just not approached this as a society, as a culture, as a species, in a way that is light. And so we make it a massive deal. And it's kind of like, it doesn't have to be such a big deal to go and get some of the tools. It doesn't have to be such a big deal to go and get whatever it is you get for a sprained ankle, that thing. You know? And so it's the same. It's the same. And once you realize that as well, it's not such a big deal, as you were saying, to go back to square one, because you realize that you've just hit another little piece where you're going to have to expand further.
Yeah.
But you're not back to square one. You just, you're just on the next step. Actually, that's it. You're not back to square one. You're just at the beginning of the next step forward. And that's important to remember as well.
I love that. And I love that you pick up on that healing, people make it difficult. It doesn't need, healing is not difficult. It really is. It's painful sometimes, but it's not difficult. And I think that's the difference right there, is that there are so many tools out there, and there are so many people like you and me and all these other incredible people that are out there doing the work, that there's somebody out there that will resonate with you, that has been through what you have been through, that's going through what you're going through, that can help support and encourage and remind you that it's the process, and it should be light and it should be joyful, because life is heavy and it is dark. And I think that's the one thing, if nothing else, that the last 12 months has taught us, is that, to slow down, because we've had to, and has given us the opportunity to see where we need to make the changes and make the shifts. But it's up to us to take those steps forward. And so just having access to all of these, it's all out there. We have Google now, we can search, and, we have podcasts and we have YouTube, and we have all of these different ways to find answers to whatever it is, a community or a technique or a conversation that will help to remind you that you're not alone.
100%. And, when you're saying to take the steps to move forward, that made me think we often talk about, we need to take responsibility, which I completely agree, but it sounds a little bit like a telling off. And I like to add, and responsibility is power, right? Yes. That's, take back your power.
Taking your power back, yeah.
And then, and because you can transform, you can heal, but
yes,
take your power and then go do it.
Oh, and that's such a beautiful place to end this has been amazing. Honestly, Mèv, I loved this show. It's been so good. And I think, all of your information, all of your contact details, everything will be up in the show notes so people will know where to find you. They can reach out to you and they can share your light and joy and your incredible blend of psychology and neuroscience and shamanism and all of those beautiful elements that you have pulled together to create this really powerful system. So thank you 1,000,000% for joining us. So very grateful. Thanks, Mèv.
Thank you. I'm super grateful as well.
Thank you. All right, take care.
Great.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining me today. I truly hope that you enjoyed the show, and there is at least one thing that you can take away from today's episode that will help you build that sustainable healing toolkit. It would mean the absolute world to me if you would subscribe to the show, give it a 5-star review, and share this or any of the other episodes with somebody that you feel could really benefit by listening. I look forward to seeing you next time.